Hi, and welcome to another episode of Your Right to Know, brought to you by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. I will be your host this evening, along with my co-host, Mary Lotze. And today we have a guest who is not a stranger to the show. In fact, he's a very close friend of Your Right to Know and the Fitchburg Republican City Committee, Sheriff Lew Evangelidis. How are you doing today, Sheriff Lew?
Andrew, we're having a great, glad to be with you guys. It's nice to see you again. Hopefully next time it will be in person, but I feel great. It's so nice to be with you and Mary. Thank you for inviting me.
We hope to be able to start filming in person very, very shortly. Just getting out of the COVID, as well as having some staffing issues for the show, has caused us to still remain on the Zoom meeting, but we hope to get live very shortly.
Great.
But it is, Lew, I have to say, it has been way too long since the last time you've been on our show. And we want to talk to you about all the wonderful programs that you're doing in Worcester. But tonight, not only do we want an update, but we want to see how things in Worcester are going as we come out of the pandemic. You had a phenomenal story that we talked about before we started the program. So, Lew, go ahead, take it away. Tell us everything that's been happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll start with today because I'm coming fresh from this afternoon. We had one of the historic days in our department's history, and I'll explain it in a moment, but I actually started my remarks today saying that, you know, the Worcester County Sheriff's Department was founded in 1742. We moved to the Worcester location from Worcester location to West Boylston in 1973. We had a major doubling expansion of the jail in 1991, where they put in modular units, which were supposed to be a temporary fix until we built a permanent facility. But today was another day like that. And I said June 16th, 2021, we today had a ribbon cutting for our, what they call the medical intake unit. It's a $26 million centralized location at the jail, 32,000 square feet. And we had the ribbon cutting today with not only the governor, lieutenant governor, the secretary of public safety, the commissioner of DCAM. We had local police, which I'll be talking about in a moment, because there's a big component of this to help the local police departments. And we were joined by Chief Martineau, as a matter of fact. So Mayor DiNatale. It was a huge day for the department. It's a huge day for the citizens of Worcester County and public safety. What this is, it's a building that was 3 years in the making. So we had the groundbreaking in May of 2018, and it took 3 years to get it to where we needed it to be. What's going to happen in this facility is it's a centralized location. We had an area that was open in the middle of the jail. We will bring every person now, every inmate that comes into our facility will be brought into the receiving area. Some of them are going out for day trips, go to the courts, bail reviews, trials. Some are new arrivals. They will arrive in the facility. They will now have a state-of-the-art place where our medical staff will evaluate them. Our mental health will evaluate them. We have 30 holding cells that we will be using to evaluate these folks and decide where they're going to go in the institution, because some folks need medical care, some need mental health services, some need to go to the orientation unit, and some need to go back to their cells. But this is, when I say I really look forward to you guys coming and touring this. This is a state-of-the-art facility, state-of-the-art medical building. It feels like a hospital, but it's also serving so much more. And it's going to make it safer for our employees, our correctional officers, our civilian staff. The sight lines are better. Everyone, we had so many people that were involved in the planning process to make sure that the flow of this building made sense to make our department a safer, better place. So we have this incredible thing we've soft opened it a couple of weeks ago. We now have a state-of-the-art facility that inmates are going to be coming through every day by the thousands. But we have a beautiful facility now that's state-of-the-art. And we also, this is an exciting part of the ancillary benefit. We have 30 cells that inmates will be in during the day. And at night, they're going to be sent to various parts of the facility. They're going to be open, and the weekends particularly. And a lot of people aren't familiar with this, but we call it a regional lockup, safe keeps. A lot of the local police departments, maybe not Fitchburg per se, maybe a few would come in from Fitchburg. We talked about this. But if you're a more rural department and you arrest someone on a Friday night for a drunk driving or a violent offense, and they're not able to bail themselves out, they will sit in your jail cell all weekend. And mind you, these are police departments that have limited funding, limited employees, staffing. They have to take someone, either a patrolman off the street or a dispatch officer, and watch someone in a cell 24/7. You got to feed them. You got to make sure that their medical conditions are met. They're not trained to do this. And what I'm telling you guys, Andrew and Mary, is we are the professionals when it comes to care, custody, and control of inmates. So we're going to work now to take those inmates who are been arrested, awaiting for arraignment. Now they're going to be transported to the Worcester County House of Correction, and we will take custody and control of them. We will take care of them all the weekend, and then we'll drive them down to the courts to be arraigned. So it's going to save thousands and thousands, probably ultimately hundreds of thousands of dollars for our local communities. And I think it's going to be doing a job that the sheriffs are better suited for than our local police departments. Some of the cities, like I mentioned, Fitchburg, Leominster, Gardner, Milford, Worcester, they have the ability for safe keeps or holding cells, but many of them don't. And those that do really aren't trained to do it. So we will be able to help take the burden off of almost every community in Worcester County on some level. And it's going to save an enormous amount of money for our community, so they can redistribute that money, hopefully for, law enforcement and public safety, as opposed to spending it watching someone in a jail cell for 3 days, which makes no sense.
Yeah, in fact, you bring that up. A lot of people aren't aware that there are some towns where it's almost like a part-time police department.
Yeah.
I'm working on a case out of Northampton right now where the chief, and I've had a lot of conversations with the chief, he's part-time. He's a plumber full-time.
Exactly.
And, and they usually have like one officer on duty, for a town that size. So, it really makes sense. I know it's not in Northampton's, not in Worcester County, but it really makes sense to have a centrally located area for those small towns to be able to transport any kind of prisoners that are coming in or inmates that are coming in to be able to have them taken care of over, say, a long weekend. You get arrested on Friday night, you can't bail yourself out, and nobody else you can't call, if you don't know anybody who can come to bail you out, you're in for a long weekend. And if you're in this little cell with nobody around.
Well, I think also we have to look at the staff of our emergency rooms in our hospitals, because if an inmate gets into a medical issue, we'll say taken from the scene of a accident or a domestic problem or a drunken or drugs, and they're brought into the jail, or they need to be brought to the emergency room, that problem then gets transferred to the emergency room staff, where we've had a high incidence or a higher incidence of physical assault on hospital personnel. And in many ways, this could translate to some of those statistics of the high incidence. One of the things I'd like to talk about before we get, and I'm sure you just always have so many programs, so maybe before I change the subject, anything new other than that, because you've been impacted negatively because of the pandemic. A lot of the programs you used to do, like the senior picnic and some of those outreach things where you went into communities and you worked, and maybe some of those had to be stopped because of the pandemic and the social distancing and masking requirements. So, how did the pandemic have a negative impact on the communities? I know it had a negative impact on certainly the inmates and the jail system itself.
Oh, yeah.
Related into the community interaction also, I'm sure.
Well, I'll first start with, you mentioned, like, for example, the senior picnic. That's our outreach programming. It's done in a partnership with the Sheriff's Department and the Reserve Deputy Sheriff's Association. We do so much work in the community. One of our signature events is that senior picnic. It's 1,200 people jammed under a tent. It takes 200 volunteers. It's an extraordinary day. Well, last summer, obviously, we weren't allowed to do it. This summer, it's still in flux, but we aren't really planning to do that type of event. It just doesn't seem smart for someone who's a sheriff looking out for people's safety to bring 1,000 people underneath a tent. But we want to do something, Mary. So we're hoping, and right now we're planning on maybe doing some kind of event where we can have cars drive through. Like, I partnered with the Fitchburg Senior Center just last month, and the Sheriff's Department and the Fitchburg Senior Center, the great team they have there, we put on a senior lunch for the folks in the community, and we had hundreds of people come through. And what we were able to do is schedule them to drive through, provide them with lunches. We'll provide them with other goodie bags and chances to say hello to people. And some other folks who are partners with us will also hand them stuff and give them a chance to get out, see some folks, do it in a safe way. That's like the community kind of things we want to still do while we figure out the end of this pandemic. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the community stuff really shut down. One thing I'm very proud of what we did, very proud. And I'll talk about the jail in a minute because this was our most challenging year ever. No question about it. And obviously that's the essence of what we do. But I'll give you an example in the community. I am so proud of our Reserve Deputy Sheriff's Association, and which you've been part of, Mary. I know you have. And Andrew, you guys are great promoters and supporters of this program. Tell you what we did. Our team wanted to help the community. And I always said, we'll be there to help this community in times of need. Well, there was no greater time than COVID. We decided to do some things like this. How about this? And I know you were at one of them, so I know that. But how about the idea that seniors were locked in their apartments, they couldn't shop, they couldn't pick up their prescriptions. Now we're going back in last, in
March,
April, May of 2020. We put together teams of dozens and dozens of volunteers that would go out weekly and shop for seniors.
Yeah.
They would pick up prescriptions for seniors. We have our outreach team. We got so many donations to help people when they needed the PPE kits, whether it be face masks, sanitizers, different things they need, gloves. We distributed 3 rounds to every 60 towns in Worcester County, 3 rounds of deliveries of those to the senior centers to help protect people. So we had our finest year, in my opinion, the Sheriff's Department and the Reserve Deputies. And another thing I want to tell you, because this is where I know you were at, I have probably never had a prouder moment as sheriff in my life in public service. When last May, and we did it again this May because it's so successful, but last Memorial Day, we got a phone call from St. John's Memorial Cemetery in Worcester that they could not put out flags for veterans who had served their country, the ultimate sacrifice, who served their country because the Lotze kids weren't in school. Their volunteer base had kind of disappeared over the years. Unfortunately, they got older, and they had 5,000 flags to put out, and they needed some help. So we asked them, how many people do you think would need to put together? We can get a team. So they suggested 25 volunteers. So we put out an email to our Reserve Deputy Sheriff's team. And we have about 600, 700 members. When we told people, don't volunteer if you have high risk, if you've got certain factors, but if you're healthy and able and willing, we could use 25 volunteers. Well, we didn't say no to anybody, but last year we had 125 volunteers show up, as you remember. So excited to play a role in something so important. We actually have the honor guard from the Sheriff's Department there. We had Lois Dwyer sing the national anthem that year. And we had prayers offered for the blessings of the flags. And we had an army of people. And the feeling I got that day was we were honored to do this. This was an extraordinary thing we could do to give back to these people who gave so much to us. So to fast forward this year, I didn't know. I got a call from them. They said it was so successful. Could you help us put flags out again and by the way, last year, nobody was doing this. The city of Boston didn't allow it. The Boston Globe came out to write about our story because they couldn't believe what we were doing. It was on the front page of the Boston Globe. And how touching was that for the sheriffs and the Reserve Deputy Sheriff charity to be recognized in the Boston Globe to do something so important. But fast forward to this year again, another Memorial Day, we were asked to do it again. I said to the directors, we'll come. I said, last year it was slow, COVID had just hit. I said, I was overwhelmed by the amount of people that came. I said, but I'm hoping we can still get 50 volunteers. And we put it out again. And this year we had 150 volunteers.
Yeah.
So
now, do you still have your dogs working?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
about to ask that question.
Everybody loves dog stories, and we love your dogs.
Do you have any additional ones?
Well, oh yeah. We had some retire too. So I'll tell you a couple things just about the new programs before I go back to the old dog programs because I love them. We started 2 new programs in the last year. So during COVID, well, one was just as COVID was hitting, the other one was during COVID, but one is a music therapy program. We partner with Anna Maria College. They
dog dancing?
No, this is music. They teach the inmates how to write music and play music. And these are our best inmates. You know, we don't coddle people at our jail. You have to earn your way into these opportunities. But if you do, and it's funny because the program is called Opportunity. And what it is it brings about a dozen inmates together. They support one another. They write music, which is a form of therapy, and they express that. And then they have a concert that we have at the jail in our chapel. And we've actually allowed a very small amount of family members to come in to participate in this moment. So what I love about this program, the inmates, we have one inmate, I won't say his name just out of privacy, but one guy was our first graduate. He's now out on the circuit. He tours, he plays in bar rooms. He wants to be a professional. He's got a great job. He's sober. He's a remarkable young man. And I ran into him at one of the first games I went to Polar Park, and it was great to see him outside, and he's thriving, and he thinks this program had a lot to do with it. So it's a wonderful program. What I love the most is the woman who started this program. She actually told me that she started the program to expose young people to music. Like in some of them, in some communities that have not had opportunities for good music programming, she wanted to expose music to people. Then she thought, why not inmates? So we started a partnership. She said that those people, those graduate students, these are graduate music students. They come to the jail. She said they get more out of it than the inmates.
Oh, yeah.
They have learned so much about the people incarcerated and built relationships with them and want them to succeed. And remember, we're not talking about the hardened murderers and rapists and sex offenders. We're talking about people who have drug and alcohol addiction, who've come before the jail, revolving doors. And I'm not making excuses for them. I'm just saying is we give them an opportunity to turn their lives around, and they got to meet us halfway. And those in this program do. So a wonderful program. We started another amazing program this year, a culinary program. We had dreamed about a culinary program to teach the restaurants can't get enough people. Yeah. They're calling me every day. Do you have anybody we can hire? They don't have anybody. We can talk about that, the issues behind that, what's going on, but that's not the issue for me right now. The issue is people have jobs. President Reagan said the greatest social program is a job. And I could not agree more. Yes. And these folks are in need. So what we did, it's amazing. We needed most departments. I'm going to be honest about this. I believe they probably need $100,000 to start a program like this. All the new equipment, the kitchens, the rehabilitation of the facility. Not us. We found the Salter School, which is in West Boylston Street on Route 12, was going out of business. And they had a culinary school inside. We bought all of their equipment, all of their ovens, pizza ovens, all their pots and pans and everything for $10,000.
Wow. Oh my God.
And we had our staff refit a brand new kitchen. So now we have a high-end culinary program, 4 certificates, and these inmates, again, well-behaved inmates, get an opportunity to learn the skills of cooking and the safety that go with that. And they get the certificates, they're employable immediately. And again, we have a moment where they have their final meals. We invite 1 or 2 members of their family to come. Everybody's, screened, so we make sure everybody is checked, but everybody who's allowed in, and we share a meal together, and they get a chance to show their families what they've learned, the skills. And then we got people waiting for them on the way out the door to employ them. So there's 2 new programs we did during the last year and a half. Dreamed about them, now they're happening. But the dog programs, as you guys mentioned, we love the dog programs. I'll tell you the first one, which I'll mention, is the one where we have the adopted program, where the overflow shelter dogs come to us. We have our inmates live with them. And during that time of 12-week program, they're trained on how to get these dogs adoptable because they usually have slight behavioral issues. Well, we've talked about this program before, but let me just say, not only does the program, the inmates bond with these animals and they change as people. The officers tell us that the block's it's a work release building. It's the least secure building because these are inmates who are the ones we allow work on the grounds. They're people who have never violent offenders or anything like that. So it's a more open living environment. The dogs become everybody's pets. There's usually 4 at a time. The blocks are safer. The officers never feel safer. The stress level goes down. And just last year during COVID, we had our 100th adoption. 100 out of 100. Yep. Wow. So we couldn't be prouder of So that's a great program. And then the other is our dogs that we have adopted by officers, but they work for us. They work for the people of Worcester County, but we have them live with an officer, but they work for us, and they're narcotics detection or they're bloodhounds. And we just had Maya retire because her officer, Pete Cambo, who is the longest serving member of our department, he retired last month, and Maya is his pet. So we're going to be replacing Maya, but we usually have about 4 dogs at a time. Usually it's 1 bloodhound and 3 narcotics detection dogs, and they are amazing. And we train them in Plymouth County Sheriff's Department. It costs us virtually nothing. Most of these dogs are adopted. My first dog, Nikita, who's still with us, he's 10 years old, but he was part of a national TV show called Shelter Me.
We all went. Andrew
That's right,
and I,
you were
we
there.
went, yes.
Yep.
And
Yep,
it was
you were there.
incredible, but he was filmed and part of a Hollywood television show, put on national television. Only 2 dogs were part of that national broadcast. It's only done once a year. One was Emmylou Harris, the famous country star. She had a shelter in Nashville and dogs. And then our Nikita, who served the people of Worcester County. He was a rescue dog from Puerto Rico. He's a little Sado, but he does the work and he's still on the job. So,
Everybody loves the dog stories. What can we say?
No, I got to be honest, you can't compete with that.
But I can imagine also, like during COVID and the lockdown, it must have been very difficult on the jail system and the isolation. I mean, we all felt it, and I can imagine the dogs added humanity and companionship to many people.
Well, they did, Mary. As a matter of fact, I thank you for reminding me because, we have so many new stuff and we try to be innovative. You're going to love this. We haven't started the program yet, but we just had the Department of Corrections come out to our facility just 2 weeks ago. They have comfort dogs that they use now for staff, not for inmates, for staff, especially high stress areas, correctional staff who've been involved, always have, you never know what can happen any given day inside a facility. So with that, with medical, with our civilian staff, we are going to start moving towards a program for comfort dogs that will live with someone on staff, but will bring them to work daily. And they will just be available to meet with staff who need them. We've even heard stories of officers who've been through some very traumatic situations. They don't want to talk, they don't want help, but then they get a chance to meet the dog and they start opening up and they start healing because nobody should keep all that inside. So the comfort dogs are happening now, and that's probably, you're right. I mean, with everything else going on, that's another important component because running a jail facility was our most challenging year. I can assure you, remember this, you got to go back a year now. We forget. Back in March of 2020, April, May, there were people filing lawsuits against us every single day, going to the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court and saying, mass release these inmates, they're all going to die. It's a death sentence. It was crazy. But there was so much craziness going on and so much, hysteria that they were getting a movement afoot. And I'm proud to say the sheriffs, 14 for 14, we unanimously opposed that. We argued to the Supreme Judicial Court. The district attorneys were almost unanimously with us, but there were a couple who did not agree with us. We pleaded with the courts to, if anything, do a case-by-case review, but anything beyond that, like the idea of releasing pretrials or releasing sentenced inmates with less than a month left or 2 months in their sentence, or releasing anybody to the over the ages of 50, any of those things would jeopardize public safety.
Yes.
I could not be less supportive of it. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you a couple footnotes to this story. Number one, it never happened, at least here. I don't know where these people said these folks were dying, but we had almost 0 cases of COVID inside our facility. When we did have outbreaks, remember, we were ahead of this, Mary and Andrew. We quarantined inmates immediately, just when it first hit. We had separate building, 14-day quarantine. We made sure that we had all the cleaning equipment. Before anybody else had bought it, we had already purchased masks, gloves, cleaning supplies. Our staff and our inmates cleaned that jail top to bottom 3 times a day from the get-go. So we were really prepared, and we could not have opposed this notion of mass release or releasing people because their lives were in jeopardy incarcerated. Matter of fact, I will make an argument, in many ways, it was the safest place for a lot of these people to be, who, if they got released, you don't know where they're going to go. We don't have any reentry plan for them. I mean, if we release someone today, many of them, we've had weeks to prepare a reentry plan. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Do you need services? This mass release, they just chaos.
I know, it was just open the doors, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
craziness, and I'm
How
so
many
proud
people
of
were
the fact
released?
we managed our way through it. We had very little COVID, and I'm just going to tell one last story. Then you guys can, reread. But
I know, we're like down to the wire.
oh well, I just have to tell you this story. It's great. We've opposed this. A judge let an inmate out that we opposed. He had some offenses that we did not want him out in the community. We had a headline in the paper: "Zero COVID at Worcester Jail." This guy got out of jail, came back a week later, recommitted a crime, and had COVID. That's how we got COVID at the jail. Can you
Wow.
imagine? You can't even make that up.
Sheriff Lew, we are out of time. Thank you very much. And to all our viewers, we're calling it short, but you're right to know. Come and see us with the Fitchburg Republican City Committee, and don't end up with Sheriff Lew, even though he's the greatest guy in Massachusetts.
Thank you both. I always enjoy it.
America, we stand for freedom. So let us all unite to yearn and strive for our republic that reflects our values, that preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values and preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and